morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
After a rare trip to the city, I sometimes reflect on how much awareness the urban world might have, even in the heart of historic cattle country where we live, of the richness of the lives of folks that live beyond the blacktop. Do these urban folks know or even care about the land, the hard work, the long hours, the deep satisfaction from living the life, or the amazing adventures that folks experience doing things like, say, running cows through the chute?
The heel of his right Justin Roper, at roughly the speed of sound, made solid contact with the fork of Mel's family tree. Mel barked like a dog and dropped to his knees.
Well, Baxter Black has the rest of that one today, and it is a little graphic, but it's interesting. The Rangeland News has all kinds of information, some of it even positive.
The beef industry is making a gradual return to at least a modicum of normalcy after those major disruptions in April and May.
In the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, something I think you'll like.
As you ride across the plain, it's that deep down inside feeling that no words could ne'er explain.
On the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a look at some of the professional elements of working cattle on horseback. And Fred Hargrove is back with music and reflections of what we do.
You almost feel like a surrogate parent, you know, that you feel this real close relationship with nature and helping mama keep that calf alive.
And to set the scene for today, here's R.W. Hampton.
Sometimes in the evening, I'm out of horseback, my mind goes to another time when men were free to roam. The prairie was their home, and the only thing above them was the sky. Back to the good old days, stories of Will James, Rawhide Rawlins, Charlie Russell, and the rest. As I blink away the tears, all my fences disappear, and for a little while I'm a drifting cowboy. Drifting cowboy rides a range on a bald-faced sorrel bronc, on a wood that's seen its better days. He just pulled out of yesterday, heading westwards for tomorrow, for new people, different land, and better pay. Drifting cowboy don't wear no man's brander. If he does, it's all haired over, 'cause he pulled up his stake pin long ago. His past is written in the lines on his face, and his future is written on the wind. The only friend to a drifting cowboy. Then my mind comes back to the right here and now, to the care and troubles of the present day, to the blue sky up above, those old mesas that I love, and that old setting sun that seems to say, hey, you best be on your way. But I pause for one last time to watch an eagle as he circles above me in the sky. And I wonder at his freedom, wonder what he thinks of me, 'cause I know our hearts are the same. Like my brother the eagle, my spirit rides the wind. Oh, don't you wish you could follow him, drifting cowboy? Drifting cowboy rides the range on his own home ranch, where he's been a punching cows for some time. And it ain't really half as bad as he sometimes likes to think. 'Cause although he's a home guard, he knows down deep inside he's a drifting cowboy. Drifting cowboy.
Now come on back to a sunny afternoon in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the guy who managed Michael Martin Murphy's New Mexico ranch for a long time, Fred Hargrove, has joined me in the shade of a big old oak tree. Now, you've cowboyed around a lot of different parts of the West. Where Kansas, and what are some of the other real nice places where if you sort of could pick the country that you could cowboy in, didn't matter where it was, what are some of your favorite places?
Well, I'm actually living in one of my favorite places. It's been kind of a lifelong dream, an area I've been going to since I was 6 years old, and that's in the San Luis Valley of southern Colorado. I live outside the small town of Monte Vista, and some people know that part of the country, but it's always really been kind of a special place for me. My dad took me there fishing while I was growing up, and it's kind of my sacred ground. And I took a risk selling out the ranch in Kansas, and I still have a lot of great friends in Kansas and a lot of great memories, and go back there frequently. But I can tell you now, after living there for 2 years, my guess was right, and I just love it. It's, to me, if heaven isn't much better than that, I don't really care to go. I'd just rather stay there.
You still get horseback behind a bunch of good cows in that beautiful country?
I do. When I moved out there and sold my ranch, and I travel with Michael Martin Murphy now, and have for the last couple of years, actually performing the music and doing several other things in the musical industry. But I gave up the full-time ranching. I used to go to hit festivals, and I could only hit a few every now and then, because you know what it is when you're ranching full-time, you can barely get away. Well, now I have a few steers that I'm fattening in a pen, and I do day work for some of the big ranches out there right in my country, but I've reversed. I'm out there singing about the cowboy life and spending a lot of time on the road instead of being able to live it. You know, some folks are millionaires and they can hire somebody to take care of the ranch, but that never was my situation. I had to do it all.
Fred talks about some of the differences between owning the ranch and the cattle and being a day-working cowboy. And you'll hear another one of his fine songs when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The conversation this week reminds me a lot of the long, quiet ride back to the trailer with a good partner after a successful day of working with cattle. But actually, we were just sitting in the shade as Fred Hargrove and I talked about the kind of things that we both love. I found that since we sold our main cow herd, and we've got a few token cows around, enough to keep our farm status for property taxes and that kind of thing, now I spend a lot more time day working and riding with a lot of neighboring outfits. And there's a lot less stress and pressure because, I don't have the financial hit when things don't go right. And we go to a branding somewhere, and I just get the rope and drag calves. I don't have to make sure that all the vaccinations and everything are here and the ear tag numbers are right and everybody's assigned a job. No, I just get on my horse and ride in and drag calves.
I completely relate with what you're saying. I mean, I have a very similar story. When you have ownership in the ranch, and that profit is kind of a rare thing, and it takes everything to go exactly right. You can't have bad winters where you lose some calves, especially when I never had a really large herd. I had 250 cow-calf pairs when I was kind of in my height of my operation, doing it by myself, but every calf loss cuts deeply into your profits. So you have to love the life, but definitely different when you're just a day work cowboy and you don't have that responsibility. To me, the mental stress has been relieved, and now you can kind of sit back and enjoy the moment and what you're really doing, the activity. So it's not all bad. I really do miss the cow-calf operation, though, because I'm sure you take you almost feel like a surrogate parent, that you feel this real close relationship with nature and helping mama keep that calf alive, and you kind of identify with everyone that you bring into the world, and they're your family. They're your extended family.
Yeah, and I'm sure Billy, my wife, kind of misses the frigid calves on the kitchen floor trying to dry out and warm up by the fire or in the bathtub, you know.
That's right, or, a couple of bottled calves, that you end up having to orphan, take in, and bottle feed, and they usually end up in a warm place, which is sometimes your back porch or your house.
Yeah, wherever you can get them warmed up and dried off. And you're right, Fred. There's something about seeing your own brand on those calves or putting your own brand on.
There's no doubt about it. I miss that connection because it's just an inner sense of fulfillment that if you get a healthy calf crop and you raise them into good-looking animals, there's just something about that inner pride that you take that can't be replaced by too many other things.
That's for sure. And now here's a song that Fred wrote, and it definitely has a message, and he'll talk about that after you hear it. It's called The Code of the West.
Rockies lived a mountain man trapping furs was his trade. With winter setting in, but brother to the Indian living with him, he was not afraid. They hunted side by side, trust each other to survive. They all stayed alive. And down through the years there came a trail of tears. He stood by them through their grief and strife. But where's he gone? He's been gone too long. Well, he's gone like the rest, and he left with the code of the West. Yes, he's gone like the code of the West. A long time ago out in New Mexico, a man rode across his land. Rode hard every day, checking for strays. He was a hell of a hand. Honest and tough, he didn't know how to bluff, 'cause he was a man of his word. He always told the truth, he loved his young wife Ruth. Generations he was the third. But where's he gone? He's been gone too long. Well, he's gone like the rest, and he left with the code of the West. Yes, he's gone like the code of the West. Today, bankers and lawyers say sign these papers, don't even ask please. They file their lawsuits, they serve foreclosures, making people get down on their knees. In modern day Denver, a man skips dinner, instead puts a gun to his head. Had nowhere left to turn, he thought they'd never learn, and now he's laying dead. And where's he gone? He's been gone too long, but he's gone like the rest, and he died by the code of the West. Yes, he's gone like the code of the West. The code of the West. The code they're all gone like the coat of the West.
Well, there's a message there, and here's some of the reasons why Fred wrote that.
And I'm not really one to get into heavy politics or making large statements, but I had worked in New Mexico and seen the change coming to the West of, maybe large money folks from coasts moving in and not thinking that they wanted to live the ranching life, but not really understanding it, and also not really carrying the code of ethics, the code of the West that a lot of us that are from the West grew up with, and basically how to treat people, and by that simply also translates into the golden rule: treat people as you would like to be treated. So I wrote a song called "The Code of the West," and it kind of goes. It starts in the early history of a mountain man living with the Indians, having no racial conflict, living with them just like it's like their family and brother, and surviving in the Wild West. Into second verse, it talks about a rancher from New Mexico being third generation, and kind of dealing with things. Every end of every verse makes a statement of how it's changed on them, and they're no longer here. They're gone like the coat of the West. And when I get to the third verse, here's where my biggest statement comes in, because I've had a lot of friends that suffered through some of the financial parts of ranching, and it would be it kind of goes along with bankers and lawyers who really kind of forget to respect a person for being a person, and just having you sign on that dotted line and not worrying about the effects of foreclosure or lawsuits or anything like that. So it makes a rather large statement about how I really believe I would like to see people start thinking more about each other and bringing back that code of the West, which has disappeared a little bit in our modern western United States. I don't know if you see it up in BC or not, but it's happening through a lot of the Rocky Mountains.
And in fact, we are seeing that happening now right around here. Well, we've been very fortunate where we live. We can see indications that that may be happening in the future, but for the time being, most of the folks who have moved in seem to realize the long-standing values of the ranching country that they now live in. But the subject of how the long-held values of ranching folks sometimes aren't understood by newcomers will be illustrated in another good song from Dave Stamey a bit later. Next, Baxter Black drops in with a look at The Spare Horse, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at The Spare Horse.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you, to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check Corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
Oh, come go with us, Cal, invited Lee. It'll be a beautiful ride, and Mel's got a spare horse. A spare horse, pondered Cal, as in extra, like spare time, or duplicate, as in spare part, or a horse that's called in when the 10-pin is left standing. Oh, why not? Cal agreed. Lee also assured him that they had a spare saddle. They gathered in the scenic Uintas in the shadow of Mount Nebo. The spare horse turned out to be a good-sized bay mare. Good, thought Cal, who weighed 250 pounds. However, the spare saddle that Mel brought was indeed spare. It had no back cinch, no breast collar, and a narrow fork that didn't fit the mare very well. I traded work for this spare saddle. Didn't cost me a dime, bragged Mel, who was a lug tightener at Big O Tire. Lee held the mare's lead rope tight as Cal began to mount the 16-hands mare. Left foot in the stirrup, hand on the horn, he placed his weight to spring. The saddle slipped to port. Mel stepped in just as Cal's right foot arced up from the ground. The heel of his right Justin Roper, at roughly the speed of sound, made solid contact with the fork of Mel's family tree. Mel barked like a dog and dropped to his knees. The mare, spooked, pulled back on the lead rope, which burned through Lee's hands, peeling an ear-sized chunk of hide off his palm and fingers. He wailed like a tomcat. The mare tilted, and Cal was left behind, suspended in midair, levitating horizontally for a microsecond. One almost expected a magician to appear and run a hoop over his body to prove there were no wires. Alas, the microsecond ended. Cal fell like a roll of wet carpet and landed flat on his back with a thud. He never bounced. The rest of the crew was too impaired from laughing to help him get up, and when he finally got his wind back, Mel was standing semi-erect and Lee was licking his palm. "You still want to ride?" asked Lee. "Well, it depends," said Cal. "You could ride my other horse," offered Mel. "Is it a spare horse?" asked Cal suspiciously. "No," said Mel. "I would say it's a primary animal." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science.
Not much can raise your stress level more than a tractor breakdown when you need it most. We've all spent hours on the phone and driving around trying to find the right parts, and that's no fun when you're missing something you need to finish the job. Here's a better way. Just go to bctractorparts.com. That's where you can find about any part for any make of tractor. If you're restoring a vintage tractor or just keeping up the maintenance on the ones you're using, you can have the parts you need in a short time. And you know what? There's some great pictures of tractor restoration projects and much more right there at bctractorparts.com. What? Oh, you don't have internet? Well, try calling Mark at 250-395-0960. Well, just ahead of the Rangeland news, Gary Felgard and his wife Lynn were married in 1956. And they had their 64th, I think it would be, anniversary just a couple of weeks ago. Boy, they are great role models for all of us. And here's one of Gary's wonderful Western songs.
There's a hawk in the sky with a lean and hungry eye, a hunter of the old brown hills. Somewhere in the west, the sun is gonna set, a moment just before he makes his kill. A cowboy's maimed in fence, and the heat waves rise. There's a wind with a breath like a fire. He kicks at the dust, and he wipes his brow. The falcon came to rest upon the wire. He sat there just looking at the cowboy. The cowboy looked right back at him. Guess they must have reached some understanding. If we share this range, we might as well be friends. We are the keepers of the earth, down here in the dirt, with every living thing at our mercy. For one moment in the wind, you and I, my friend, are given all this power and this glory. We are the keepers of the earth, keeping her for better or for worse. Just like the falcon and the cowboy, he slapped his hand on a worn-out shack, had a drink from a warm canteen, and as if to say, well, I guess that's it, the falcon, he just up and flew away. He circled once and looked down at the cowboy. The cowboy stared right back at him. I guess they reached some final understanding. If we share this range, we might as well be friends. So long, old buddy, till we meet again. We are the keepers of the earth, down here in the dirt, with every living thing at our mercy. For one moment in the wind, you and I, my friend, are given all this power and this glory. We are the keepers of the earth, down here in the dirt, with every living thing at our mercy. For one moment in the wind, you and I, my friend, are given all this power and this glory. We are the keepers of the earth, keeping her for better or for worse. Just like the falcon and the cowboy, just like the falcon and the cowboy. We are the keepers of the earth, just like the falcon and the cowboy.
The Rangeland News from the Spirit of the West, a roundup of issues and events from the world of agriculture.
At the top of page 1, it says the calves and the yearlings on the ranges around here are looking as good as I can ever remember seeing them. And a lot of the conversations at the brandings where limited-sized crews did their best to comply with the guidelines were pessimistic about what's going to happen this fall. Well, according to Gary Crawford, a recovery might be underway.
The beef industry is making a gradual return to at least a modicum of normalcy after those major disruptions in April and May, part of June. But what parts of the business are seeing positive margins? What parts are running in the red? We asked USDA's livestock analyst Shale Shagam for his view on that, starting with beef processors and working back to cow-calf operators.
Right now, packer margins are still positive. They've come down dramatically from what they were, when we had tight supplies of beef and limited slaughter capacity, but they are still positive. The most recent information we have for feedlots would be through June, and their returns were negative.
And for cow-calf operators, their returns right now are what Shagam calls
not stellar,
but on an annual basis,
they are slightly positive,
with average prices running roughly only about $1 a hundredweight less than this time a year ago. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Retail beef sales have increased $3.5 billion in the U.S. during the COVID-19 pandemic that began officially March 15th, and that's according to some analysts. The month of July was expected to bring declining retail meat sales as consumers begin re-engaging with food service. But the spiking number of cases has scaled back restaurant and food service activities, which is shifting dollars back to retail again. For the week of July 19th, the elevated everyday demand resulted in a 23.4% increase in dollar sales versus a year ago for the meat department, and that's the highest gain since late May. Well, another victim of the pandemic is the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. It was scheduled for Penticton, BC, August 11th to the 13th. And the CBIC is in the process of planning a virtual conference for August 11th to the 13th, and they'll be posting updates at their website, CanadianBeefIndustryConference.com. And as well, Farm Fair International has had to be canceled for 2020. The team is working hard on the event for 2021, and updates are going to be posted at FarmFairInternational.com. And the province of Alberta says it will allow the processing of animals on farms for meat sales to consumers, loosening regulations after the pandemic interrupted production at those big packing plants. Alberta previously restricted the consumption of meat from animals from outside of government-inspected plants to farmers and their households. Now, some farmers and mobile butchers who travel from farm to farm wanted the government to ease the regulations to be more in line with those in other Western Canadian provinces. August 25th at the BC Livestock Producers Co-op Kamloops Yards, there's a special yearling sale and regular cattle sale. And the next regular sale at the Williams Lake Yards is August 27th, the regular cattle sale in Vanderhoof on the 28th. Get all the details and see the sales streaming live at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail Auction Market, congratulations on their 65th anniversary. And, of course, they have regular cattle sales every Wednesday. You can get all the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item, and we heard from an old cowboy friend who retired a while back, and now he's living in a senior center. Kind of a tough situation. He's never been the kind of guy who's been up to speed on technology, and we bought him a CD player, and boy, he got pretty excited. You mean I don't have to rewind it or put the needle on it when I want to hear it again? That's great. Well, we called him a week later and asked him how he liked it, and he said, "Oh, terrific. I spent all morning listening to your CD, The Creak of the Leather." "Wow," I said, "the whole thing?" And he says, "No, just the first side so far." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a few things picked up from a lot of years riding with some consummate top hands, and more from Fred Hargrove when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, some of the things veteran working cowboys know, and it really does make a difference between being a pro and a novice. First, though, let's wake everybody up. Go ahead, Captain, blow the foghorn. Okay, here's an update on the next Spirit of the West cruise, and as you have probably heard, we are making some changes. We have postponed what Billy and I are calling our farewell Spirit of the West cruise until June of 2021. Okay, Big Rig, a little banjo music, please. We still expect to have just about everything we had planned for this year in place for next year, and Jim and Karen have said, if you'd like to come, then your deposits will be held until then. We're already making plans and preparations for having the whole group start things off June 17th, 2021 with a visit to the McLennan Ranch and a concert with the Western Spirit Band. We'll have coaches to take you all from our place up the beautiful Sun Peaks for a wonderful alpine experience, and then we all head down to Vancouver. A night in the spectacular Fairmont Waterfront Hotel. Something really special planned for the next morning, and then we board Holland America's Conningsdam for a 7-day cruise up the Inside Passage to Alaska. And there'll be a lot of extra events for our group, including the famous White Pass Rail Tour. For everybody currently booked, there will be complimentary drink packages, complimentary specialty dining for one night, and shipboard gratuities will be paid for each guest. We would like to thank all of you who are planning on joining us in July and hope that you can adjust the dates and join us in 2021. We'll keep you informed with the details as they come, and as always, Megan, Jim, and Karen can give you lots of information. 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
It's true, folks are always telling me how much they love shopping at Irvine Tack and Western Wear, but many of them live way over yonder and far away, or they're still uneasy about heading too far from home. I tell them, no problem. Go to urbans.ca and shop online. It's all there. The biggest names in Western wear, oodles of saddles, and all that unique Western home decor. So giddy up and get online at urbans.ca today. Irvine Tack and Western Wear,
Canada's largest Western store.
A few years ago at the main event, Bryn Thiessen and I were getting ready to do cowboy church on horseback, and I had Lucky, the wonder horse, there and was going to lead the singing, and someone had loaned Bryn a horse, and they said, "Here, we'll saddle him for you." And Bryn said, "No, I always saddle my own horse." And that is one of the things that is a tradition, really. A cowboy always saddles his own horse and lets everybody else do the same. And a few other things like that. A cowboy doesn't offer to hold another cowboy's horse if that cowboy gets off to open a gate, but will do so if the other cowboy requests it. And of course, one rider always waits with the guy who's closed the gate until he's safely back on his horse. Cowboy does not cut in front of another rider on the trail, and here's one that goes back a long ways. When meeting another rider, a cowboy never assumes that the rider's horse is seasoned and well broke, and he won't do anything that might spook the horse or put the rider or himself in a valuable position. That's so often why when you see two riders meet, they'll just nod. When cowboys have finished doctoring a cow on the range, the cow is not allowed to get up until everyone is safely back on their horse. And a cowboy always removes his spurs, chaps, and hat, usually his boots, before going into the house. And I like this one, a cowboy knows that a clean saddle blanket is more important than clean sheets. And a cowboy never jumps his horse into a run if he's got a long ways to travel. A good cowboy always knows which way the wind is blowing and never kicks dirt in another man's plate. Always takes his assigned place on a gather, ends the day in the same place between the same two riders, whether they've crossed mountains, rivers, or prairies. And this is one that I learned a long time ago, and I pass it on from time to time. When things go sideways and the herd breaks or one animal runs away, I will not run my horse wide open after them unless I know I've got about a 90% chance of catching the cattle and turning them or stopping the runaway yearling or cow. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that is the Horse Training File. When folks comment on how good old Lucky looks at 35, I say, well, yeah, I think that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration has a lot to do with it. You can find out what's in it at hoffmanshorseproducts.com. The way the Canada Revenue Agency deals with ranchers and farmers has changed a lot in the last few years, and the financial decisions we make today can have a long-lasting impact on our bottom line far into the future. It really helps to have a trusted professional who really understands your situation to guide you with all your accounting requirements and your tax preparation. Having an accountant who knows the difference between a Hereford and a heifer, what a slick and backgrounding are, and that Alfalfa and Timothy are not just names from a storybook, really helps. Kathy McMillan of PMT Chartered Professional Accountants understands the intricacies of specialized programs like Agri-Stability and Agri-Invest. She understands the demands on your time and can help you spend more time doing your job and less time dealing with endless piles of paperwork. See PMTaccountants.com or call toll-free 877-383-8081. Well, it still feels to me like we could be riding along stirrup to stirrup having this conversation with Fred Hargrove.
Yeah, you know, Fred, what we find as we travel from Texas to northern British Columbia and the Peace River country, and it's always in cattle country, cowboy country, ranching families. There's no difference, basically, except maybe in some of the gear and the trappings and maybe some of the drawls you find. But we do the same job in the same country. There's an artificial line that some politicians have drawn on a map that means nothing to us. It's pretty much the same, and yeah, I've seen that happen to neighbors and friends of ours, and the same kind of challenges. But still, what we find that the basic values and the heart of the Western people is still there when you find them, and they're still family ranches, 250 cows, 350 cows, and it's a struggle, but it's a proud way of life, and they do their job with pride. And we find young cowboys working for bigger outfits that have a degree in animal science, and they're as professional as any doctor or lawyer or corporate CEO, and they do their job with that much pride. And it's hard to see. You know, you don't see it on the main interstates going up and down the road, but they're out there.
That's right.
And it's great to see.
Yeah, like several songs that say you just can't see them from the road.
But that doesn't mean they're not there. No. And we've got a lot of working ranch rodeos going on across the country now, where ranches will send their best crew, 4 or 5 of their best hands on their best horses to compete in actual working ranch events, team doctoring and team branding and one-man doctoring and sorting the way we do it on the ranch, and bronc riding and wild cow milking. And these are getting to be a real popular thing with the general public, and they begin to see that the roots of professional rodeo came back from the real working cowboys. So I think maybe, you know, the cowboy's going to be around for a while yet. I sure hope.
I really agree with you, Hugh, and I see that actual, you know, we really haven't lost population other than some of the more resort areas where some of the landscape's changing and people are getting crowded out there. But we're going to survive. You know, food and agriculture has to be, you know, without that, we're going to cease to exist. So it had better survive. But I think the biggest thing with that song, realizing that we still exist, but I don't really want to say intruders, but if you have people that are coming into the West, then they need to learn about the Western heritage and respect that. And that was probably just the incentive of my song, was to bring a little bit of awareness of how maybe they should conduct themselves.
Fred, it's just been a real pleasure. We could visit for hours and swap stories, and I hope it won't be long before we can sit down and do this again.
I'd love to do it. We've been talking about getting together and having this little chat for quite a few years now, and I'm just totally excited we finally got her done.
And now, right in line with what we were talking about and how the changes are happening on the West, this goes back to a place where you could still put out a live concert in front of a real audience and really get things going, like Dave Stamey did here.
So I'm gonna do some new stuff for you tonight, some new songs. I'm gonna get this one out of the way right now because it scares the hell out of me. Really, it does. This song, I'm afraid, could ruin my career, such as it is. Anybody out here that has recently moved here from back east? Anywhere? Whew, oh, good. I have played this song in Oregon. I have played it in Arizona, in Colorado, in Texas. I have played it in Nebraska, and it appears that I have struck a nerve. Go west, that's what Horace Greeley said. But that was years and years ago. Now Horace Greeley's dead. But the people all keep coming and they're bringing all their stuff. If Horace was around today, he'd say that's enough. 'Cause there's houses on the coastline, there's houses in the hills. If there's room to build a house there, you can dang sure bet they will. And sidewalks and supermarkets and parking for the cars. And big old golden arches shining where there once were stars. Someone needs to go back home, 'cause the West ain't gonna hold us all. The Western Green got covered up, they built a shopping mall. Someone needs to go back home. Oh, where Grandpa used to run his cows is now a Chuck E. Cheese. And you can't stop them, boys, you're just spitting in the breeze. The desert blooms with golf courses, green grass grows. And where the water's coming from, ain't nobody knows. Someone needs to go back home, 'cause the West ain't gonna hold us all. The Western Green got covered up, they built a shopping mall. Someone needs to go back home. There must be towns back east where there ain't nobody left. Someplace they might go back to if they ain't pooped in their nest. Out here there's only traffic jams, people everywhere. A bunch of rolling hemorrhoids fouling up the air. Someone needs to go back home. The West ain't gonna hold us all. The Western Green got covered up, they built a shopping mall. Someone needs to go back home. Yeah, someone needs to go back home.
Oh, what a time that was when Dave Stamey came to the Kamloops Cowboy Festival a few years ago. Still to come is our classic Song of the West and then the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. This week's classic Song of the West, like so many, goes back to the mighty pen of Bob Nolan. Apparently, it was written for the Columbia movie Texas Stampede, but so far, no print of that film has been found to make sure, but it seems that's most likely where it came from. It was never recorded commercially by the Sons of the Pioneers, but the sheet music was included in Bob Nolan's folio of original cowboy song classics number 2 in 1940. And it was recorded for the radio transcriptions, Symphonies of the Sage, and for their Lucky You program. And Billy and I were driving home from town the other day, and this version from Wiley and the Wild West was playing in the tape deck. Grab your saddle horn and blow.
Anytime I get the urge to travel, anywhere the tumbleweeds blow. Happy when the hooves are scratching gravel, I grab my saddle horn and blow. You may think a certain place has got me, and from there I never will roam. But you son of a gun, I'll bet you 100 to 1, I grab my saddle horn and blow. I've traveled all around this country, I guess I've been most everywhere. I've been from coast to coast, way down south, I know the tang of frosty air. I like the feel of saddle leather, I love the way the pony sways. As I ride along, I'll sing my song and be happy the rest of my days. Let's blow. Country, I guess I've been most everywhere. I've been from coast to coast, way down south, I know the tang of frosty air. I like the feel of saddle leather, I love the way the pony sways. As I ride along, I'll sing my song and be happy the rest of my days. Anytime I get the urge to travel, anywhere the tumbleweeds blow. Happy when the hooves are scratching gravel, I grab my saddle horn and blow. You might think a certain place has got me, and from there I never will roam. But you son of a gun, I'll bet you 100 to 1, I'll grab my saddle horn and blow. Son of a gun, I'll bet you 100 to 1, I'll grab my saddle horn and blow.
Yeah, that's something that Wiley Gustafson would do, include a muted trumpet in a cowboy song. Like a lot of performers, a lot of Wiley's bookings have been canceled, but this one's still on. He will be, looks like, part of the National Champion Chuck Wagon Races concert. That happens September the 5th in Clinton, Arkansas. And we're going to wrap this one up with a nice piece of cowboy poetry from Jeff Dawson. It's called The Promised Land.
You can feel it in your heart as you ride across the plain. It's that deep down inside feeling that no words could ne'er explain. But you know it when it hits you like a norther blowing in, 'cause you can't contain emotions or the goosebumps on your skin. They say cowboy's in your blood, and for some of us that's true, but I've seen hands graft onto it and make good punchers through and through. As you're setting up a horseback and a staring out for miles like a preacher, it's your calling, the only thing that fits your style. Things affect you different when a punchin's what you do, like the smell of horse sweat leather or spring morning's glistening dew. You can tell a cow's direction before she ever takes a step, or a prairie fire's intentions just before she gets windswept. Your instincts all come natural like the cow sense in your horse, and all the things God gives you, you're sure thankful for, of course. You trade this life for nothing. As the years lope right on by, you've no regrets, no worries, no hard feelings to rectify. So you just keep right on punching, be it ride or rope or brand, and know you'll join the big outfit the day you reach the promised land.
As always, thanks for joining up and riding along. And thanks again to our official support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And of course to Billy for all the behind-the-scenes stuff she does to keep me on track and somewhat under control. And if you enjoy this program, I know you'll love Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. Subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube and podcast versions of the program. Lots of video and pictures on the YouTube version. You can get the links at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. And if you decide to subscribe, that would really help us out. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.